Very few people who have ever played football are great television analysts. Aikman is. Collinsworth's really, really good. Chris Collinsworth. I think Tony Romo's really good. There's been a handful. And John Madden. And the reason is because most people just play the game. They don't think it. Aikman thinks it. Chris Collinsworth thinks it. Tony Romo thinks it beyond just playing, right? And Brett Favre just played it, and he was great. But we never relied on Brett Favre for insight. I mean, second year in Green Bay, he acknowledged, I didn't know what a nickel defense was. My mom knew what that was. She hates sports. We relied on Brett for instinct. He's one of the great instinctual players ever. So yesterday on his show, he's got Nick Foles. Somebody asked him Wentz, Philadelphia. He went back to this inane argument.
I actually thought that they should have kept Nick Foles rather than Carson Wentz, just based off of production and where they got to. You know, they won a Super Bowl with Foles, and that was a little bit surprising. But they're obviously banking on his upside. You know, how many more years do you let it linger before you stick with him or you cut bait?
That's interesting because that's what the Packers kept demanding Brett Favre do, not linger about retirement. So they eventually cut bait with Brett, who didn't like it. No reasonable person thinks Foles, who, by the way, is 2-8 since he left Philly, 13 TDs, 9 picks. He was 0-4 in Jacksonville. He wasn't as good as Gardner Minshew. He's now bad in Chicago, doesn't appear as good as Mitch Trubisky. I'd love to have a beer with Brett, play golf with him. He'd probably be fun to hunt with if I did that. But we do not depend on Brett Favre for insight. We relied on Brett Favre for incredible football instincts. But he threw 60 more picks than anybody else, often in the biggest spots in games. Greg Cosell's watched film for 40 years. A couple years ago, he was on the show. He wouldn't even get into a debate. He refused to discuss it at length on my show, the Foles is better than Wentz argument.
Carson Wentz is a high-level talent at the quarterback position.
Right.
Carson Wentz is probably a top 3 or 4 talent in the league at the position.
I agree.
Okay? Last year, the Eagles were scoring well over 30 points a game before he got hurt, and he would have been the league MVP. He came back from an ACL. Who knows if he came back too early? You know, Nick Foles, there's an incredibly wide variance in Nick Foles' play from week to week. He shouldn't be in the same conversation with Carson Wentz.
I agree.
So to me, this is not even worth a conversation. This is like trying to tell me that 2 and 2 is 5.
We don't judge Jeremy Lin because of one great month for the Knicks, do we? We don't listen to a band who has one really cool song and think, oh, the Beatles, or even Imagine Dragon. Like we know it's a one-hit wonder. There's a term for a band that has one hit. Nick Foles is a one-hit wonder. That's what he is. He's a one-hit wonder. He's not even a good band. He's a band that had one really awesome hit. Nice kid. Love to have on the roster as long as I don't have to pay him. And I'm done arguing with Brett Favre on Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. No reasonable person thinks that's a debate. Really, really interesting news out of San Francisco with their core Clippers. No, that's an agent trying to, quote, create a market for Westbrook. A really good team's interested. Ooh, the Clippers are interested. Jerry West is interested. And no, they're not. That's an agent that leaks a story so it creates a market. Yeah, the pathetic Knicks may be interested, or awful Charlotte. Even the Charlotte rumor this morning, oh, Charlotte loves him. If they do, it's for one reason. Michael Jordan has Westbrook under his shoe brand and wants to sell shoes. He doesn't want a Westbrook to look pathetic on the market, not cool. They're trying to create this market that everybody wants Westbrook. Oh, Westbrook, very valuable. Nobody that's any good in this league is looking for a 6'3.5" guard that can't shoot, the worst contract arguably in the league, and can't play with top stars. You know, it's funny when you hear this stuff. I heard this for years. Oh, Chris Paul, tough to play with. Excuse me? Well, why? We used to talk about Blake Griffin. We don't anymore. Why? The minute Chris Paul left Blake Griffin, I've never uttered his name until this moment. DeAndre Jordan was a thing in the NBA until Chris Paul left him. We don't talk DeAndre Jordan. Chris Paul's a winner. He doesn't have to win titles. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal, Magic Johnson, the late Kobe, Michael Jordan, LeBron have kept a lot of people from winning titles. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Warriors. A lot of guys don't win titles because you have these, all-time top 5 players, top 10 players. Chris Paul goes to Oklahoma City with a bunch of people you don't even know, and they get to the playoffs. I always hear that Chris Paul is tough to play with. I don't know if he's tough to play with, but everywhere he goes, he wins. I'd love to have Chris Paul on my team. He's old school. He'll get in your face. He'll play defense. He'll yell at you. He'll lead. He'll hit a mid-range jumper. Never afraid to take a big shot or guard the top. I love Chris Paul. Westbrook, I've never understood. Here's the reality with Westbrook. And now, all you people who are so mean to me, bigly, very, very hurtful, you have to admit 4 things. Number 1, he was never a number 1. Since KD left in 4 years, he has a single playoff series win. Number 1s in this league do not struggle to get out of the first round, even in the West. He's never been a 1. Number 2 is he's a complimentary star. He just doesn't understand it. That's what took D. Wade from a really good basketball player to a 3-time champ. D. Wade realized, Shaq's better. LeBron's better. Westbrook literally joined James Harden, and he took more shots than he took the year before. He's a complimentary star, not the star. Number 3 is he shoots too much. Last year, he took the second most shots of his career, and he still shoots 4 threes a game. He should be scoring in transition, driving to the basket, some mid-range jumpers. That is it. No more threes. Everybody gets that except him. And number 4, because he's hyper-athletic, as his athleticism wanes, he's not only not a number 1, he's probably a number 3 on really talented teams. I mean, he'd be a number 3 in the Lakers. KD and Kyrie's a number 3 on Brooklyn. Steph and Clay, he's a number 3 on Golden State next year. He's a 3. But there's a lesson to be learned here with Westbrook. Stubborn and rigid never win in any industry. They never win. One of the most impressive things about Nick Saban, the coach of Alabama, is not that he wins football games. A lot of people have won. But these old coaches hit like 55, 60 years old, and they get stubborn. Not going to change. My way or the highway. Nick Saban, mid-60s, about 4 years ago, decided, I am going to change my offense completely. We're going to spread it out. We're going to have 4 receivers. We're not going to be a power running game. I'm going to have quarterbacks who are mobile. They can move around. And that's why he's the king. Westbrook's in his 30s, and he's rigid. I get people that are older and rich and successful, and they're like, I'm done. I'm just going to be me. I get it. I understand it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. I don't agree with people in their late 20s and early 30s who are like, I'm not going to change. So I think Westbrook will end up going to like the Knicks or Carolina, and Michael Jordan will bring him on simply to save his shoe deal. That's what that's all about. That's about Michael wants to make it feel like he's still cool and there's a market. And Westbrook will score a bunch of points, and he'll be hyper athletic, and he's fun to watch. But there's a lesson to be learned here, is that people that cover the NBA fell for athleticism. Everybody's an athlete. I mean, the NBA is absurd. 7-footers now cranking up threes. 7-footers run the floor. 7'4" Porzingis runs the floor like wings used to. This league's nothing but talent. Everybody can jump. Everybody can run. Almost everybody can shoot. Hyper athleticism doesn't make you a 1 or a championship player. And number 2 is players that adapt win titles. Michael Jordan scored a lot of points. Phil Jackson took over and said, Michael, you got to share the ball. You want to score 50 or you want to win? And Michael Jordan, and Michael can be rigid at times, but Michael adapted. He started becoming a better teammate. Started passing the ball to guys that were clearly not as good, the Kerrs and the Paxsons. Tony Kukoc, is that the lesson to be learned here, if you cover the NBA, hyper-athleticism does not make you a 1. Just makes you fun to watch. And the lesson to be learned for basketball players is adapt and evolve. LeBron started shooting threes halfway through his career. He shoots more every year. He gets better every year. He was a freight train, and now he's a really cool, nimble train. Can take turns and shoot threes. Adapt is always the answer. All right, so that's maybe the last time I talk about this, as you know on this show, as I'm a defender of all things Carson Wentz, though I acknowledge he's reckless and drives me nuts and inartistic and sometimes is just frustrating. Throw a shoe at a TV, frustrating. But this is more about Brett Favre, who has a weekly,